Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar from Warin Lab Contemporary. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we have a great pleasure to have a very high caliber panelist with us. And as you know, today we'll talk about the theme of art and environment, private and public sector. And we're going to talk about the dynamic of the two sectors, how we can get involved to discuss about this important issue. Before I forget, let me remind you of some housekeeping. This webinar is streaming live on Facebook, and everybody's microphone is muted. If you have any question, feel free to ask at the end of the session, or you can write in the chat box, and we will make sure that we'll cover all of your questions. So let's start off by introducing our panelists today. We have Patrick Flores. He is a curator, art critic, and professor from the Philippines. He's a well-known figure in contemporary art scene in Southeast Asia. He is a professor of art study at University of the Philippines, and he is also a curator of the Vargas Museum in Manila. In the past, Patrick was a curator for the Philippine Pavilion in Venice Biennale in 2015 and artistic director of Singapore Biennale in 2019. And that is where he worked with Ruangsak Anuwatwimon, one of our panelists today. And recently, Patrick was appointed as a curator for Taiwan Pavilion in Venice Biennale in 2022. So welcome, Patrick, to the panel. The second person we have is Loredana Pazzini-Paracciani. She's an independent curator who based in Bangkok at the moment. Her research and curatorial practice revolve around socio-political issue in Southeast Asia. And she has a notable exhibition in My Iem Art Museum in Chiang Mai that discuss diaspora, exile, exodus of Southeast Asia. And in this project, we have an honor to work with Loredana to curate the show Reincarnation 3 by Ruangsak with us. And the third panelist is the artist himself, Ruangsak Anuwatwimon. He's a Thai conceptual artist who is passionate about science and nature. His ongoing project, Reincarnation, started when he was invited to Japan in art residency in Kitakyushu, where he started Reincarnation #1 in 2018, where he discussed the extinction of the local species. And in 2019, he was invited to Singapore Biennale and he developed Reincarnation #2. And now in 2021, he is exhibiting Reincarnation #3, where he discussed the local species and the extinction at Warin Lab Contemporary. And that is part of the discussion today as well. So before we start, let me give you a little bit of background about who is Warin Lab Contemporary. My name is Phon. I'm the founder of Warin Lab Contemporary. You can see on the screen here, this is where we are. And we opened early this year. And we relocated in Bangkok, Charoen, Soi 36. After I have done some research about the location, we found out that this particular building is a home and an office of Dr. Bunsong Lekakun. He lived in around 1950 and he passed in around 1992. He lived until he's around 80 years old. During his time, he was the first person in Thailand that launched the conservation movement for wildlife. So as you can see the building here, this is where he lived, and also he holds a library in this very building where he has artifacts of thousands of species and books. You can see in the picture here, that's how he looked like, Dr. Bunsong on the cover of the book. And the logo up there, this is his Association for Wildlife Conservation that he created in 1952 at this very building where we have the gallery space. And on the right hand side, you can see the picture of his office. So our gallery wall used to cover with all those artifacts and books that Dr. Bunsong has collected. So we find that it's very fitting to have the gallery program that devote to environment throughout year 2021. And in this exhibition, when we discuss with the curator and discuss with the artist respond to the space by having the exhibition about Schomburg deer, which is a species that Dr. Bunsong has devoted his time to research and also provide a lot of research book for people to understand more about this species. So before we move to the panel, I would like to show you some video of the research, how Ruangsak has created this exhibition. Please enjoy the video.
พอเราเริ่มรื้อฟื้นวิธีการเก็บข้อมูลนี้ยิ่งเจอสิ่งนี้น่าตกใจมากกว่าคือเรายิ่งไม่รู้อะไรเลยคือการเอาสภาพแวดล้อมของพื้นที่ที่สัตว์ชนิดนั้นเคยมีชีวิตอยู่แล้วก็มาสร้างเป็นตัวผลงานศิลปะ Reincarnation ทั้งหมดไม่ใช่การรื้อฟื้นสปีชีส์นั้นแต่คือการรื้อฟื้นประวัติศาสตร์ของสปีชีส์นั้นๆขึ้นมาว่ามันเกี่ยวข้องกับอะไรบ้าง
So that is a little bit of a background of how Ruangsak has created the research for the show. So now I would like to move to the panel, and I would like to start off our first discussion point. I would like each speaker to reflect from their own perspective the importance and challenges of engaging between art and environment in your particular practice. So I can please start off with Patrick.
Thank you, Fawn, for this invitation. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'd like to share my screen now. Is that okay? Yeah, can you give me permission to share my screen? Okay, thank you. Can you see the screen now? One. Okay, so I'd like to speak to the issue of environment through my work as the artistic director of Singapore Biennale in 2019, where I met Ruangsak, as Fon has mentioned. No? The title of the Biennale was Every Step in the Right Direction, and it came from the female revolutionary in the 30s in the Philippines, Salud Algabre, who fought the Americans for land and freedom. The rebellion that she was part of didn't succeed as we know it. When she was interviewed several years later, a historian asked her, "Where did you go when the revolution failed, when the rebellion failed?" And she answered him that no uprising failed, each one is a step in the right direction. So I got that line from the interview of Salud. So one important artist in the Biennale was Amanda Heng, who coordinated and organized walks with women around Singapore. So I tried to constellate this idea of walking around uh, like a hyper-developed city, very fast-paced and hectic city. Uh, I wanted to constellate that kind of walk around the around Singapore with the idea of the right direction that Salud Algabre was talking about in the 30s. No? I'd like to look at environment as world making. The Singapore Biennale is thought to be a regional exhibition, but we wanted to challenge the idea of the region of Southeast Asia uh, that should lie beyond the geopolitical construction of colonialism and the Cold War. So we wanted to expand that region through the bodies of water around it, like the South China Sea, South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean that releases the region from where it is to the other parts of the world. So we also explored the highland in Zomia and the piracy in the Sulu archipelago below. So the colonial construction of the region and the was also seen in relation to the commemoration of the arrival of the British in Singapore 200 years ago, the commemoration of which coincided with the opening of the Biennale. That's why the quote of Salud El Gabre in relation to the commemoration was important because it complicated Southeast Asia's relationship with colonialism, European colonialism. So art and its context. In this case, the gesture of art and also curatorship becomes geopoetic and not just geopolitical because it involves the material production of, of artistic forms in relation to the space from which it emerges. And also, it is an ethical proposition in view of Salud Algabre's notion of the right direction, of rightfulness, and also Amanda Heng's gesture of collective and thoughtful walking. So for me, this is the environment that we can broadly speak to. It is a kind of world making through the Biennale. And also environment as site specificity, and this is in relation to Ruangsak. No? Ruangsak's work was situated at the Gilman Barracks. Uh, and yeah, so curatorship is specific, and I wanted to. There were several artists who were placed in Gilman Barracks, and I wanted them to speak to the situation or to the environment of the Gilman Barracks. So the Gilman Barracks is, as you know, as people in the art world know, is an arts hub, and I'd like to quote the Economic Development Board that uh, that uh, manages or that has designed this facility. So Gilman Barracks is a whole of government initiative that enhances Singapore's standing as an Asian arts hub. So this is part of Singapore's aspiration to be the center of art and culture in the region, having already museums and other cultural institutions. So there are galleries in Gilman Barracks, and the Wangsak's work alongside other works in the Biennale were placed in some of these galleries. No? So some just images of the Gilman Barracks. No? We occupied, I think 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5 galleries in Gilman Barracks. We had other sites. We had like around 14 sites of the Singapore Biennale. So this is one of the main buildings there, and we also had some exhibitions in these galleries. I'd also like to make mention of the history of Gilman Barracks because it's part of the consideration how the works would be placed in the site. General Webb Gilman, and this is also interesting information to the history of Warin. No? So, named after General Sir Webb Gilman, a well-known officer of the British Army, Gilman Barracks sits on a site that was formerly a jungle and a swamp, comprising barrack buildings, married quarters, messes, regimental institutes, and sports facilities. It was specially built to accommodate the 1st Battalion, the Middlesex Regiment, which was sent to double the British Army's infantry strength in Singapore. It was the site of a fierce battle between the regiment uh, and the Japanese soldiers during the last 3 days before Singapore fell to the Japanese in February 1942 during World War II. So I was interested in this kind of environment, a forest that became a military facility. So the artworks cited from the Biennale that were placed in Gilman Barracks were at different levels, speaking to this history of one, ecology, and second, military industry. Yeah. So this is how we transformed, for instance, parts of the Gilman Barracks. This is the work of the of Bangwa Anthony Wei, who's of Hmong ethnic lineage, who is now residing in Australia. So these are images from his personal archives as well as historical archives that were transformed into stickers pasted around the Biennale site at Gilman Barracks, so around posts, on the steps, and so on and so forth. So this work speaks to the condition of memory and history, and I wanted to evoke that kind of atmosphere as the audience moved around the barracks. No? So sorry. Oh, sorry. So just disregard this thing. Oh. So this is, well, Nature Walk by Singapore Biennale artist Robert Zhao Renwi. So this just goes to show that the Gilman Barracks has this active forest area around it, no? And that history was being spoken to by artists of the Biennale. No? So this is one artist outside the one of the rooms, one of the galleries, Paponsak Laor, a work titled Far From Home Meeting Place, painting images of exiles from Southeast Asia covered with vines of flowers, partly made from leftover paint. Paponsak had a large painting or series of paintings at the National Gallery in Singapore, and he had site-specific works around Singapore too, like this one. There was one in the National Library too. So, and this is the work of Ruangsak, and he will explain that in more detail later. So this is Reincarnations, Hopeya Sanggal, and Sindora Balichi, so exploring extinct plant species in Singapore. So this was the room, no, that where Ruangsak's work was placed in. Yeah. These are some of the, this is a drawing from Ruangsak and a closer view of the work in Singapore Biennale. Actually, he will explain this in much detail later. And then together with Ruangsak was the work of the installation of Dusadi Hontrakun, also from Thailand, the map for the soul to return to the body, in which the project inscribes contemporary concerns in artifacts of the Banchang archaeological site. So this is the installation of Dusadi. We also had the work of the artist from Brunei, Zakaria Omar, Fossils of Shame, the Pillars. It's about reclaiming burnt driftwood from old stilt houses demolished for waterfront lifestyle facilities in Bandar Seri, Begawan. So this room is a little bit tightly controlled curatorially by Jantung, and I thought it was productive to place them in one room together. And this is also the the building closest to the forested area where Robert had his nature walk. So this is a close-up view of Zakaria Omar's work, and also, of course, finally, the work of Robert Zaurenwi, Queen's Own Hill and its environs. And this is the hill around the barracks. So it's about investigating the secondary forest of the previous environment of the Gilman Barracks and the object species which reference the history and transformation of the ecology over time. So this is a close-up view of one of the pieces in Robert's cabinets of curiosities, as well as videos and other forms of documentation. So I end here, Fawn, and maybe I can join the conversation later.
Thank you, Patrick. So Patrick has explained to us about environment as world making and environment as site specificity. So art in itself has the ecology, and what he has talked about is you place the art that has the placement that is relevant to the location. So now let's move the floor to Loredana. As an independent curator, and you work a lot on the investigation and the research in your curatorial project. Can you tell us more about the important and challenge you face when you want to incorporate environment in your art?
Thank you, Fawn. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Yes. Thank you, Fawn, for your kind introduction, and for and everybody to attend this webinar. It is also a great honor for me to be here today. So I will start by sharing my screen with you all. It is now clearer than ever the irreparable damage that we have done and continue to do to planet Earth. This begs the question, should we not pause and consider our future actions? After all, we seem to be at a turning point in history. The ongoing coronavirus pandemic has spotlighted the efficiency and consequences of our precarious attempts to tame Mother Nature. It has forced us to halt our activities and reform our lives. Beside the COVID-19 pandemic, the onslaught of fire and flood ravages, destructive weather phenomena, and the extinction of flora and fauna are but unmistakable signs of the looming ecological disaster on us and on our future generations. Responding to these environmental and social perils, artists, curators, and art platforms the world over, and specifically in Southeast Asia, which is the focus of our session today, have been taking collective action with and in support of their communities, raising awareness and prompting to action with their works and practices to the undermining of environmental threats of our times. This environmental consciousness, as Fawn mentioned, has been present in my curatorial practice across public and commercial spaces, and in a way, in response to Patrick's intervention in relation to public spaces, and in particular the Biennale, I will focus my intervention more closely to projects that I've developed with commercial spaces. In this opening slides that you can see now on the screen, for instance, there is a screenshot of a recent work, When You Arrive You Would Regret, developed by duo artists and activists Irawan Hamed and Tita Salina, part of the current exhibition that we have at JWD Art Space. And in this particular work, the artists focus on the exploitation of power and natural ecosystems, in particular in relation to the Indonesian islands. and particularly in this film on Batam. Other example of other collaboration, for instance, that I developed with galleries is a project in 2019 that I curated, a solo show by Dim Q. Titled Pure Land. This was a collaboration with Tan Contemporary. And this project allowed us in creating really interesting synergy between the artist, the curator, and the gallery space, allowed us to explore complicated issues of environmental damage from the perspective of even more complex issue of memory and trauma of the Vietnam War. This project, in fact, emerged as from a critical investigation of the ripple effects across Vietnamese society of Agent Orange, that we know is a herbicide used as a chemical weapon during the Vietnam War. As much as a memory of war, the ruinous effects of Agent Orange, from birth defects to physical deformities, and this is the subject matter of Dean's work, which you can appreciate now on the screen, to the destruction of entire ecosystems in Southeast Asia, but particularly in Vietnam, whereby the herbicide was absorbed in the soil, in the riverbeds, and in the seabed. These ruinous effects are still considered a taboo subject today, for various reasons, as we explore in the project, but varying from cultural beliefs and also, of course, financial reasons. While this project was based on issue of environment from a perspective of destruction and war, the project Reincarnation 3, which is the framework of this talk at Warin Lab, looks at environment from the perspective of endangered or extinct animal species. However, while working on this project, I realized that whether we approach environmental issues from a historical perspective or current perspective, it is unavoidable, I would say, to implicate with geopolitical issues, as also Patrick mentioned, in terms of economy and distribution of power. In the case of Reincarnation 3, for instance, on one hand, the project looks at ecologies of life that are in danger of extinction or already extinct. On the other, however, it highlights the consequences of human actions, from exploiting natural resources to manipulating history and geography for financial benefits. To give you a little bit of a contextual information, the artist, activist, environmentalist Ruangsak Anuwatwimon started Reincarnation, which is an ongoing project, in 2018 at the Center for Contemporary Art in Kitakyushu. And these were the species on which he focused: the the Japanese wolf, the last white rhino in Africa, and the Bhutan lorry butterfly in Thailand. As we've heard from Patrick, Reincarnations 2 took place at the Singapore Biennale with specific investigation on flora species. And Reincarnation 3 takes place at Warin Lab, a commercial space. In a way, to me, coming a full circle, although I imagine there will be more reincarnations, moving from a research center to a public event, the Biennale, to a commercial gallery. And by including as wide a variety of flora and fauna species, this ongoing project highlights the impact of their disappearance, not only on natural ecosystem, but also on mainstream national narratives. And the case of the Shombo deer, which is the species research for Warin Lab, is a case in point. Endemic to Thailand, this type of deer was last seen alive in the wild in 1932 and declared extinct in 1938. Its unique basket-shaped antlers have piqued the interest of many collectors at the time, which partly drove to the extinction of this species, with some even theorizing to clone the animal in the attempt to overcome the laws of nature. Despite being a species native to Thailand and specifically in the Green Plateau near the river, the Chao Phraya River side near Bangkok, the only and-bound specimen is not in Thailand, its home country, but in the National Museum of Natural History in Paris. Adding to its colonial trajectory, this local deer species was named after Sir Robert Schomburgk, who served as British consul in Bangkok from 1857 to 1864. Left unresearched for many years, it was only in the mid-60s that the Schomburgk deer was reconsidered as an extinct species as it entered Western natural books and hence colonial narratives. The mid-60s, as we heard from Fon, is a period that intersects very interestingly with the history of the location, of Warin Lab, and to which the artist very actively responds with a site-specific work. The art space, as we have heard, is in fact the former house of Dr. Bonson Ligakul, which was a general doctor, but he was also the first environmentalist in Thailand. It goes without saying that the developing of Reincarnation 3 at Warin Lab created a very significant connection between art and environment, in a way interestingly similar to what Patrick just so far discussed, not only responding to the species endemic to the country in question, in this case Thailand, but also responding very actively to the space in which the exhibition of the artwork was developed for in here, Warin Lab. While receiving the full support of the gallery, made this project possible. And here I would like to underline how interestingly commercial spaces and deeply researched environmental project can very well collaborate. Of course, there have been other challenges, and often there are challenges while dealing with environmental projects. The most important is probably accessibility to research. As entire ecosystems might have changed completely, or entire communities might have moved out or disappeared, so that research can only be conducted on what is left available. And to this extent, I would like to draw to an end by highlighting the number of research trips that Joe or Ruangsak conducted to Rangsit, which was one, the Greenfield Plateau that I mentioned earlier, and now is turned into commercial plots for aggressive development. Those trips, and here we have some images, I've accompanied also Joe on some occasion, provided us with great opportunity to interact in a physical way with the environment that this particular deer inhabited in the 20th century. In fact, while investigating on these animal species, what the artist and I, following him, he's been my guide really, we realize that this species often disappear without leaving traces in natural histories books, posing the bigger question on who owns and writes history. This is also a section of Patuntani where we went for some research. So I would like to end here and pass the mic, so to speak, to Ruangsak, and then we'll come back for more discussion together. Thank you.
Thank you, Loredana. So you mentioned very interesting point, and I think we might come back to that, even though all your practices that you show, whether from the Vietnamese artists or Indonesian artists, is about environment, but things that really connect them is the engagement with socio-political aspect of the society, which is integral part of the environment and how human has intervened with the environment, and also the challenge of how you can have access to research, especially with Ruangsak Project, that the deer has disappeared for over 60 years, and the trace it left is so little. So let's move the floor to Ruangsak to give it a little bit more of the insight from artist's perspective of the important challenges to engage with the audience.
Thank you very much for Loredana and Kun Phon for give us chance for me for this exhibition. In fact, it's quite how to say that quite surprised me for do this project on this year, because this when we have hit by COVID-19, we got a lot of course this is, I think this everybody this got a lot of problem of this changing the lifestyle or something. This is unusual, or you have to social distancing or something like that. So detail of art exhibition, you will face on this like very difficult to appear or something. This could be happens on this year, or even this is those years before. But again, it's not really conclusion about this COVID-19 whatsoever, but it remind me how this is environmental, nature, and human. This is developing is come to in the round a circular together. How this we still living on this same planet, same earth, and this is will still affect to us for since we extinct. I will say that whatsoever by something this is can be happen. So I would like to share my screen. And sorry, this somehow this is some picture. This still kind of stereotype, because this is we use the same source for representation. Yeah. Okay. So for Kun Phon question, this is the reflection to each speaker on the important and challenge and engagement with the art environmental in my practice. In fact, this is kind of really related to me like long time ago. Since I started to do that kind of project on 2007, it's called Azhar Project. So I would like to refer on that time, because it's root of every project is came based on that project. But first, the inspiration of my work perhaps it came from this. On 1997, I still young and still learning art in the school in the campus. So mostly this is very traditional, but one time I go to Siam and found this book. It's named Color. I think Loredana should know this is where this the magazines came from. It's supported by Benetton, the boutique design or something like that. So it's the first time that I saw this magazine, this brutal, not in the shape of the beauty picture of this model or something else, but this most of context in that magazine is all about how we use animal or how animal affect to human civilization. In front page is just a smash. I think this fox on the road, like flat on the road by a car hit or something like that. So the whole in the magazine they talk about that. even this use it as a medicine or belief or something like that. And this drive me, but it still keep it in my mind. Why the question, and also this reflect to me, this is in kind of Buddhism, in this is Thai social or Asia, or come to be bigger like in the global. This is what this we as a human reaction to nature, to this species. So I started this Azhar Project on 2007 by request from curator from Belgium. He asked me this, do I have some project could be fit in the museum in Belgium? It's very brand new museum, and this talk about only biologies. And open choice for me, you can do everything, even this like a decomposite work or burn thing or something like that. So of course, is that project, that kind of project is never happened in Thailand. We have a lot of taboo about that. We do not show disgusting exhibition in Thailand. Then is my opportunity. I give it. I follow it. So on that year, I searched and found a lot of species die by our activity. The first picture is, oh, sorry, this is quite small, but it's about the pollution in Chao Phraya River. So it make a cause of death of the fish. Is agriculture farming fish is Nila Talipia, is really very much in Thailand. So dies like 7 tons, and this make anger for the farming. So they throw that dead fish on the front of the factory. That people thought this is made cause of the pollution. So I bring that dead fish as a sample for this project. Of course, this is already rotten, full of the smell. Second is the bird is quite rare in Thailand, but it's called singing bird. It came from the southern. It's really beautiful, but where I found is in JJ market. Jatuchak market is like the largest market of the selling this animal, plant or whatsoever. But they throw it away because they die by infection and heat stroke. Is from the value of each bird is going to be 0 price. They throw in the garbage. So I asked some people to keep it for me. So each picture, there's many species that I found. On the time, I found 220 species. So I burned it. Yeah, this come from everywhere, from Bangkok to Chiang Mai to Southern. I try to as much I can do on the time and fit with this is the timeline before the exhibition begins. And also this, you have to think of this, to send this installation to Belgium is not easy. So burn every day, almost like 30 days, 1 month. Some day it's like a burn 3 or 4 species and make this Azhar Project. The up gray color is shown in Belgium. I would like to show in the flat floor as equal, whatever the species is, never be important than another. But again, there's a curator mentioned me this is not impressive. So mentioned to hanging the heart piece. That the downside is shown in BACC. And after that, there's Loredana bring that exhibition to Singapore on 2012 in cut-through exhibition. So after that, it's still, as I said, it's still keep in my mind. When curator from Japan, include with this organized by World Gallery, asked me to have exhibition in Japan. So I create the Reincarnation for that project. Mostly Reincarnation is of course, came from the Buddhist belief or something like that. But reincarnation, how to reincarnate, that species is already extinct. In the theme of the science, is impossible, right? Because we have no source, we have no everything that we can reform or reanimating that species to return back alive. But I found myself doing the research in fact, there's not like zero chance to return that species back. I asked some friend in 2013 how to clone this butterfly. It's called Bhutan Gori. This one species is very obsessed to me because it's look very beautiful, but extinct this year before that I was born. So it's very effect to me because it's a long time ago. I used to feed that caterpillar to see this how it's developed metamorphosis to be a butterfly or moth. So that process is very beautiful for me, and also this keep a lot of challenge because you have to take care, like when you feed the cat or something like that. But more than that, because you don't know how this is infected by fungus or this is dehydration or something like that. It's not told like cat to tell you, but it's just a worm, just a caterpillar. So you have to really careful with this, the whole total environmental. That species, Bhutan Gori, I researched this. We found this, the plant should be, this is a feed plant for that caterpillar, but no one can be sure that is exactly plant or not. Some butterfly is very specific on that plant. If you bring similar species, they don't eat that, and they starving to die. They don't even try to eat this. So it's opposite for many people to believe this species outside of human can eat everything. I'm not sure you get that or not, but in Thailand, because it's quite interesting on that idea concept. It's kind of the focus on ourselves as a human, this is center. So another species is quite like general important when people bring it come to be important, but lifestyle, living, plant or food based or something like that is very rare to know. And that species is extinct long time ago by many causes of deforestation, burning forests, and also that area there's a very typical used for opium plantation at the time. Another species I focus on is Sudan. Is name of the white northern rhino. Before it's going to be too long for the conversation, I would like to introduce you this kind of three species: Sudan, Bhutan Gori, and the next one is the Japanese wolf. Why it's important on 2018? Because in Thailand we also have this is one of big news. Is very important for us when we found this is a CEO of this big company. This come to the jungle and he said he don't shoot by himself, but he asked some people to shoot that the black leopard. It's kind of believe this is can rise up his power or something like if he eat that kind of the food. Why is important? Why this species human eat the species is important. We eat a pork, we eat a cow, we eat chicken, we eat a shrimp, we eat everything that to consuming to rise up our energy, our body, muscle, healthy or something like that. But that question is reflect to the book magazine Colors, and also reflect to my research on Azhar Project. We're still doing like that all the time. We cannot stop this. And why do art is can affect to that people, those people. For now, on the time, in fact, on the time, I'm not be sure, but for now, I'm quite sure this is never affect to them. They will not learning how we protect the nature and why is in nature is important, because nature is reflect to meaning of us ourselves as a human can be living in nature. It's not like human make our own nature. We cannot make our own nature. This we live in the only the planet that we have. So that installation view, this is Patrick and Loredana this show before. But very interesting thing, this is those species is quite hardly to find the information. It's rare. The wolf itself is extinct for a long time. It's like 150 years or something like that. Some people even in Japan, in Kyushu themselves, they don't know that area is have a wolf before, as it's really related to this history long time ago. But anyway, it's like a folklore or fairy tale story. But when it's returned to like in a manga. That is I showed this before. Most of people, this young generation may know this is a Princess Mononoke. So it's show this is a two tale of the wolf as it is very spiritual named Mori. So that may call eternal wolf, and is also reflect to in the Japanese itself. But the real wolf in Japan is not size like that. It's smaller, but it's also large animal. So of course, this is going to be very scary for the people who may believe or ritual before. But when this Japan is changing this system of social, they fight to the nature. As I told you, some people who come to the gallery before, Japan is changes elemental themselves to be regrowing their own forests, mostly like cedar plant. So many forests that you saw, your appreciation in Japan is not the real forest that Japan have. Then I show this project because of it's also reflect to the question why this elemental is very important. It's also in Japan, but it's not shown in everywhere else because of this talk about the mutation by radiation in Japan. This project is I not get support, so I have to come by myself, by my own sponsor, to collect this plant in that site. They are growing near the soil. This contain this the contaminated radiation. This area is called Minamisoma. It's one part of Fukushima, but it's quite close to Okuma, the nuclear reactor. This was explosion on 2011. That every people know this before. So that this installation views. And then it's going to be Reincarnation 2 on Singapore Biennale. But when it first called to me, it's really confused because the theme of this project. As I am as a Thai people, we are so jealous Singapore because of they develop well and they everything is look organized. But when I try to start to dig down in the history, step on the right direction, underneath of each step is have a history itself. And I try to find this. But again, even that Singapore have a full record of those species, Cinderella, Walshi, and Hope Sangao. But especially like Hope Sangao is what cut down on 2002. So it's very important to me. This is how this is a country like Singapore. We believe this is preserved as well, but that still happened. That Of course, this is that go on the court and this get fined by this the construction company. Again, but it's still a question. In Thailand, when we found that Hope Sangkao, mostly it came from this is kind of the ritual. It's also a question for myself. Because of ritual of the Hope Sangkao, this is mostly when they already die. But the alive Hope Sangkao, we still cutting, destroy them. So what we ritual for? We ritual for the ghost living in that plant. Why we not preserve them as it's still alive? That is a big question for me, for myself. That is solution view. So for my research, those trees is made by soil that's found in the place that the tree was cut down. But this first time, I took most of my ability to talk with friends as a scientist or some people who research what this Cinderella variety related to another species. And we saw this. It came from this is the picture. This you can saw this in the middle of the tops. Picture this. This name of the other species is mostly like 200 species. This is related. It starts from the bacteria, fungus, worm, bird, mammal, or lizard, or something like that. And what this happened when the tree is fall down or disappearing? Of course, this is effect. This is the whole elemental. But if you come on that area, you will not see, because right now that area is going to be the army base and close to Changi airport. Another thing is this tree in Thailand, what we use, we still have that a lot of the tree species in Thailand, Cinderella variety. We used to kill the parasite in our intestine. That is medicine. But as I told you this, I never found that tree size like this. 76 meters high. This is the most gigantic tree that I heard. And this is living along this is the seashore. That is very big question for me. It's returned back since after this many years after exhibition. I know this from the friend is connect to Orang Asli or Orang Silata who living on that area before. So this tree can be guardian of the whole islands. But after Orang Asli, Orang Silata have to remove from that territory to, I think it's to Malaysia. Tree as a guardian became as only a tree or the species. Of course, it's gigantic, but when this World War II came, it cannot resist. So it was cut down or bombarding or something like that, because it's going to be a target from the Japanese stamp on that area. That's very interesting for me. The detail of history of one single tree alive and have to die by conflict of the war. Should not complain about this. For Hope Sangkao, it's more smaller. It's about 30 meters high. So installation is going to be size like 42 centimeters. But also, again, it's made by soil from this the tree fell down. Then it came to this side on Warren Lab. Reincarnation tree. Oh, sorry, I swapped this image. In fact, this image should be on the Singapore Biennale, because this also the inspiration for me when I got this $5 Singapore. This is the image of the preservation, the tree in Singapore too. When I talked with Loredana, who asked me to have the exhibition in Warin Lab and Kun Phon. Later, I know that house is belong to Dr. Bunsong Lekakun, who is conservation of the environmentalists in Thailand before. But one thing this I quite concerned is one artist in Thailand already did about the exhibition about Saman, the Schomburg deals. Azhar Project on, as I respect regarding, but I knew each species is not belong to everyone else. When you want to speak, you can speak, because when it's disappear, the story can be disappear and can be changing to be something else. So I try to start to research more about the Schomburg deer or Saman in Thailand. The name Saman itself is also very interesting. Lately, after exhibition, I just knew is Saman or Schomburg deer. In fact, it means very easy. It's used for people, the elder people who play the chess. When you lose ability to win the game, it's called you as a Saman, or some easy to lose or something like that. It shows the characteristic of the Saman on that period too. When people start to hunt that deer, the deer is stay on the small island when they start to swim, because those area, this entire of the area is when raining season, it's going to be a small island, and another is going to be a swamp. So people can be hunt very easy. As you saw, there's some picture. There's a people where there's an antler to familiar those deer and can hunt this. During the research trip, of course, this is all COVID-19 already spreading quite strongly. On the time, there's a secondary spread where it's really hard to find exactly area. So and also this is ability to go that, because there's some area this is with red color of the spreading COVID-19. It's not excuse, but because of Saman territory is quite large area itself. It's belong from Rangsit. Those areas that people know this have Saman before. Come to be Suvagan is really close to the seashore. But Suvagan, we cannot go there. So we focus on only Rangsit area. But we found there's something very interesting. This small picture that you saw. This is the drain water. The cap of that is have a image of Saman itself, but local people, they don't know is we have the deer like that on that area. They just know this have an elephant, but the deer is they never heard. So it's really reflect to me what is Saman is, what is reflect to human, as this is to take this territory, to occupy the territory of wildlife, animal, mammal site like that. What is really effect to? We still have, I mean, myself still have no answer, not correct answer. We not found this is a relation to earthworm, virus, or bacteria living on Rangsit area, but we heard this Rangsit area also have the spreading of diarrhea like cholera about nearly 100 years ago. Perhaps this can be related, but who knows? Everything is already disappearing. Yeah. So I use this the whole trash is found in that area to create that this shape of the Saman or Schomburg deer. Again, it's going to be more brutal because it's I need to be quite aggressive, as this is the symbol of the nature, and reflect to that area itself on this time. So it's nearly the end of my presentation. This also the extinction species in many area, many countries, or nearly extinction species. Some you may heard about this. Some country they try to cloning, like thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger. So very soon they will cloning that species. But the question is still affect to me. Animal or plant in the past extinction, and today it still have many species going to extinction. Do we create a better life for ourselves, but we cannot create a better life for another creature? So we're gonna create a better living environmental, but we destroy another environmental for ourselves. That is reflect the question to me every time. Every project is a reflect to me. That kind of very depression. Yeah. Okay, it's ending for my presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Ruangsak, for showing us the extent of his research. And what he pointed out is very interesting, that this is the only planet we have. And the way we live, we have compromised our ecology, we compromise the environment to sustain our economy, to sustain the better living for us as human, without consider the loss of other species. And also I'm very moved when he say that when you want to speak, you can speak, because if it's something that you feel strongly about, and instead of having it as a lost memory or lost story about things that used to live in our land even before we arrive. So I think it's something that very important, that we should keep on telling the story, because otherwise it will be a lost story, and nobody after us will know about it. So thank you very much for your good work. And may I ask another question to the panel? Maybe we start with Patrick. In 2020, we see some Biennale, Taipei Biennale talk about ecological concern. We see Serpentine's Gallery have this big exhibition that involve 60 artists, thinker, scientist, filmmaker, talk about Back to Earth, which is about ecology. So now the private sector talk about it, the public sector talk about it. What kind of dynamic you think it creates?
Well, the Singapore Biennale is a public sector initiative. It's funded by the government of Singapore, but it's also true that Biennale survive, or they always collaborate with private institutions, like for instance galleries, or any facility of the primary market. Many of the artists that we represent in the Biennale are also represented by private galleries. So we engage with these galleries to give us support through the artists. So that's, I think, one way to consider the public-private cooperation between, the cooperation between private and public sector in relation to the production of exhibitions that may speak to the issue of ecology. So yeah, that's, I think, one way to do it. It's the practice of Loredana, I think, is much clearer because she works with both, no, institutions, while those who are part of the public institutions are are constrained, are somewhat constrained to work with private institutions for ethical reasons. But this is not to say that we do not cooperate with them. We do every time, no? Except that it is quite in a limited context, no? In a limited context. So yeah, I think that's the way I can answer it. Yeah.
Okay. While we talk about this topic, if any of the audience has any question, feel free to write in the chat box so that we can address your question. So can I ask Loredana, please, what kind of dynamic do you see between public and private sector now that we see that a lot of people start to talk about the issue of ecology?
Thank you, Fawn. I agree with Patrick that, for instance, in the case of many biennales, the artists are, in any case, also represented, and not specifically to the Singapore Biennale, but also Biennale in general, the Bangkok Biennale or Western Biennales as well. Artists are normally represented by galleries, and I see it as a good synergy, because one can support the other unless there are political reasons that prevents that. But in most cases, it is a good synergy because it optimizes or catalyzes the audience attention. And after all, these projects that talk about environment, as many projects that have an activist nature, the main aim is that to create awareness. And awareness can be created by engaging a large audience or a sizable and important audience that can therefore make the difference after the exhibition or in relation to the exhibition. So a synergy between private and public spaces can facilitate or support this engagement to a broader audience and also different type of audiences. Also, it can help in reach out in terms of educational programs. Of course, the biennales have engaged with that more than galleries per se. As in the nature of a biennale, and lastly, as Patrick mentioned, also funding. Of course, funding is an important item on the agenda. It's for any art project, funding is fundamental, and many times this collaboration can help. Funding can be bought from both sides. And that again goes to the benefit of the project. So in my experience, as Patrick mentioned, I'm being an independent curator, I've collaborated with public or commercial spaces, and I find when possible that combining this reality is actually very important. And Patrick's Biennale did that, as Patrick explained. The Bangkok Art Biennale the last Bangkok Art Biennale in Bangkok, I think did that also to some extent. Ruangsak was part of that project also within environmental project research, but other artists represented by wide variety of galleries were featured in the Biennale, and that support, I think, helped the Biennale going on. Yeah, this is my perspective. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Loredana. If I ask Ruangsak work in the spectrum of spaces. You work in a big biennale, you work in a small gallery like Warin Lab, and you also work with private museum. So you see all these spaces that address the same issue. What sort of dynamic do you see from this?
That's a very hard answer. for myself. Because of, I wouldn't say that many times of each project is, I found it's myself in the between of the conflict. And those conflict doesn't came from the curator of the exhibition, but perhaps it came from the policy of the past and the present. When we talk about the environmental, 70 years ago, no one cared about environmental. It is just suck, developing, destroy, cut down the forest or mountain to build the city. But this time we have to raise awareness because we have left things so little. That is effect to me. Scientists, I respect them a lot. Thank you for your mention. I work as art and science, but I can say that each project I can bring that issue. Perhaps it's less than 30%. Because when we go for connecting the real hardcore science, we found the policy of science itself in each nation, in each country. And that can be very difficult for that project. Also the aesthetic of art to represent this. I cannot full package of the paper page of the research than this piece of art, right? Otherwise, it can be like illustration of the paperwork. But yes, the point itself, I found myself, even this is scientist, I respect them quite a lot. But when it's run by government or country, it can be failed and may a cause of extinction of a lot of species because we use that for developing that country itself. How we can raise awareness from that issue? Art, activists, can we fight for our country, our government? Is possible or not? First, I thought it's impossible because it's many times this is the riot or demonstration in Thailand, they got to jail or disappear like extinction species. That is very important. The speaker of each species, of each elemental, they are disappear, forced to disappear. So what I want to talk, right now we found another news. Not sure this have a hidden agenda from the theory or not, but when we found out this is the Hague in Netherlands forced Shell to lower the carbon from fossil fuels developing. I think there's already every people know that story. 45% is quite a lot. It's near 50% like that. This is the first time that this have organization force this huge company like that. And I may saw that could be more and more in the future. When you have a homes or house or something like that, you have a little garden and you try to develop things a lot. You can be good living, but you have only one single tree in your house. Then you start to complaining. It's not fresh enough. It's not clean the air or something like that. But you cannot find another. That I think this is our perspective on this time right now. Yeah.
So follow up to what you just said, can I ask how important is activism in your art?
That's why I say that I cannot be real activist because I never show myself on the fence of the protesting to the parliament. Because of that type, I don't think it's going to be work. Perhaps this work, but it's work with a lot of people. But I do another thing else in another dimension. In art scene is talk to another people who may not really interest to the environmental or engagement to ecology issue. That's important to drag it down. And also, I'm also perhaps could be proud if I destroy the Thai aesthetic as before. Because this Thai aesthetic is just show all this the beauty things or something like that. Now you have to face on the truth of the destruction things. And this is new aesthetic. You have to living with the destruction things every day, cannot escape from that. If you want to be living on the better life or something like that, you have to solve the problem. You cannot deny or ignore anymore. Yeah. That I'm not sure did I answer to you or not.
Yes, of course. If I also ask Loredana, because your work also focus on phenomena that happen with society and also with the environment, how important is activism in your practice?
I like Ruangsak answer in the sense that if we define an activist only those very brave people that go in front of different institution to protest, that is one form of activism indeed. But I think engaging with social issues that are really relevant to today's society, our society, and trying to raise awareness on things that should be considered or changed, then I think my curatorial practice engages with that type of activism indeed. And I think art is one very important way to create that awareness. To engage with the broad audience and to start to have a communication, a conversation that may lead to first awareness and then change. So I appreciate very much Ruangzak's work, and I defined him actually activist, environmentalist, artist, cross-disciplinary artist, because I think he reflects all these different aspects of an artistic practice, which really aims to make a change for the little that each one can do. And I reflect that in my project, in my curatorial project, in all of my curatorial projects. I would say not only related to environment, but other social issues, like you mentioned, diaspora, mobility, displacement as well. And I would like to also hear Patrick, how he feels about this concern of art and activism.
Well, the title of the Biennale expresses a political desire, also an ethical obligation. So activism is a manifestation of political work, but there are other types of political work, no? And not necessarily in the language of activism. But I acknowledge that kind of practice, perhaps because the artist is also part of a larger social movement. Mm-hmm. So there are artists who are like that they are not just artists, working in the studio or working for galleries or interested in careers, but even before they became like full-fledged artists, they were already involved in social movements. So their being artists is cannot be separated from that involvement. No? So there are, of course, problems in that practice. This kind of, almost like conflation between social movement and artistic practice. But it's something that the artist uh, tries to sort out uh, every time he or she engages with the social movement, and also with the with the requirements of art. So it's a necessary tension. Uh, so yeah, I mean, from the type. That's why I made the Salud Al Gabres line the title, no? To offer up that ethical possibility, no? But at the same time, also acknowledging the capacity of everyone to create or to make that step, no? To make that step in whatever way. So it's not a like a programmatic statement that you have to do this, you have to do that, that this is the right thing, that's and the only right thing to do. So the proposition was that every step in the right direction doesn't mean that every step is the right direction, but that every step in the right direction means that the person has to think about what he or she means when he or she says or thinks about what is right. No? So it uh, initiates a process of deliberation, of thinking about what is right, and also of realizing that other people are also thinking uh, through these things, and there might be differences in perspectives about what is right. So the Biennale becomes part of this process of deliberation. Yeah, and in a way contributes to the political work, but not necessarily activist. No, although I don't know if there was an activist. I'm not so drawn to that kind of practice myself, although I acknowledge it to be important. But I there's a tendency for activist work to like subsume the artistic proposition to ideology, which I think is difficult to sort out if the artist is not so sharp about it. Huh? So I I'm more interested in everyday type of political work that I think is more lasting and also more inclusive, meaning it's able to attract more uh, people to the process. Yeah.
If I may add to this, Patrick, and I agree with you entirely. I think that a keyword that you used and also Ruangsak and I used is ethical. So to have an ethical desire or an ethical engagement, and that may resonate to different individuals in different ways. But I think that's the intent in Ruangsak case with this work in your practice as Biennale curator or curator, and in my practice to try to take an ethical stance and an ethical engagement that may reflect in different ways, but certainly I think engages in a conversation. Like you said, the Biennale opened up a certain type of conversations, and that's what we really want to have with the audience, to learn from each other, of course, and collaborate and support. Share each other's thoughts, and that is in a way a very social engagement, I think.
Yeah, and it's well, curatorship is site specific. I mean, maybe you can engage with activist artists in a different location, but not in Singapore. Uh, it's not. I mean, assembly is not allowed. No, I mean for certain political certain political reasons. So I didn't want to fight that context because I think it will wear me down, and I don't want to introduce that kind of like fatigue to the Biennale. Uh, I looked at how much politics can the context absorb, and I worked on it. I didn't try to force it on the context. Of course, another curator might be able to do it, might be able to force it, and might have had the patience or the stomach for it. Yeah, I mean, but I'm not that curator. Yeah.
I think in the ecology of Southeast Asia as a region, there are these challenges in various countries, various challenges. And so in that sense, so I think it's something that we need to be aware as artists and as curators, the challenges that different national narrative pose in terms of creating works and projects that can challenge that.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe in the Philippines it will work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Singapore,
Yes,
we choose a curatorial model for every place. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Sorry, Joe, Ruangsak?
Yeah, I agree with you too. But I saw this from many news. Is we already found out is Asia, the whole continent. Perhaps is we're gonna fight with the energy, and we have kind of a new source of developing energy. So in different direction, like from the fossil coal mine to nuclear power plant, and what is I already did from some project that is I face on the destructive area, huge area. So that my really concern about that. What I heard is the nuclear power plant will spread around. This is Vietnam to Cambodia or something like that. I don't see this as the future on that area. Yeah.
So to sum up, I like to use Patrick's sentence about acknowledging capacity of everyone to make the step. So I think what we're trying to do is at least we voice our concern to the earth about what we think, what we're passionate about in our own practice. Thank you very much, the panelists, very high caliber speakers, and I'm honored to be a moderator and to hear from all of you. We haven't got questions from the chat box, but we got a few minutes. If anybody would like to ask, you can unmute yourself and ask a question while we got all the speakers here. Okay, we don't have anybody unmute and ask questions. So I would like to thank you everyone for joining us and listen to the panel today. And I hope that we have the next webinar in the next exhibition and also share with you about things that happen with the ecology, and also maybe we stimulate some positive action from this webinar and also from the exhibition. So thank you everyone for your time, and stay safe, stay home.
Thank you, Fawn, for the invite.
Thank you, Patrick, Loredana, and Ruangsak, and thank you everybody. Okay, bye-bye.